When you think of horror games, you probably don't think of Bennett Foddy. And yet something got stuck in my head about getting over it. Foddy's 2017 Climb 'em Up. It's not very much a horror game. In fact, looking at these faces, it's more of a rage game. If you're unfamiliar with the premise, it's simple. You're a guy in a pot trying to climb up a mountain of trash using a sledgehammer. It's very hard. But that's not the interesting part of the game. The interesting part, and the reason you're seeing all of these happy people, is due to its save system. Or more accurately, its lack of one. Any mistake you make on your journey up can and will result in you cascading back down to the start, losing hours of progress in a matter of moments. It's designed to agitate a deep guttural frustration through one of the most harrowing things any human can experience. The loss of progress. And that feeling of loss can be seen in the enmity of these reactions. But that too is not what I find so interesting about the game. This is the tension beforehand. The feeling not of rage over the fall, but the anxiety of knowing that any mistake could trigger a tumble into the hollow, directionless rage of wasting your time. It's fear. Again, getting over it is not a horror game, but in this one way, it can evoke a stronger fear response than many a horror game ever could. In fact, most examples in the rage game genre can invoke this feeling. Only Up, Jump King, many more. And all of them accomplish this in the same way. You don't get to save. No checkpoints, no save states. You do it all in one go and feel every failure. It makes the losses real, because they are. And it reminds me of this game I've been playing, called Look Outside. Look Outside is an independent survival horror RPG made by a man named Francis Cologne that released late last year. In the game, you play as a survivor of a mysterious cosmic event that transforms anyone who looks outside into an insane, twisted monster. Holding up in your, thankfully, indoor apartment complex as you explore around for answers, while trying to avoid the twisting madness creeping in from every window. It's real good, but what struck me after its beautifully grotesque pixel art was the strange and interesting way it handled saving. But before I get to that, a brief history lesson on the saving in survival horror games. I promise it's interesting.
Resident Evil.
In 1996, Resident Evil was the first horror game that used a save system that actually had any mechanical wrinkles beyond, well, saving your game. If you wanted to save in Resident Evil 1, you would have to first find a typewriter, and second, have an item called an ink ribbon. Once used, said ink ribbon would permanently be expended, and you'd have to find another. And these ink ribbons were finite resources. In the original release, there were only 30 ink ribbons in the entire game, which might not sound like a lot, but knowing the length of the game, which is relatively short, that's actually plenty. However, for a new player who didn't know how many saves they had available to them, and no way of knowing if the ribbons that they had would be the last that they'd ever get, the save system could feel paralyzing. You see, Resident Evil 1's mansion was a supremely hostile place, and with limited amounts of ammo and healing items, adding a limit to the amount of times you could save ratcheted up the tension to incredible heights. The fear of the scenario itself, being trapped in a zombie-infested mansion, paired with the threat of blowing progress due to the limited saves, made Resident Evil incredibly effective horror. On top of that, it recorded skillful and risky play. Saving only mattered if you died, and if you simply never die in your run of Resident Evil 1, the save system becomes something to be used at your leisure, which ties into the game's endgame ranking system. The fewer saves used means that your rank will be higher at the end of any particular playthrough. Resident Evil's save system was relatively radical, but many horror games took inspiration from the idea of save rooms found in Resident Evil 1 as a mean to build a similar but different kind of tension. Most modern horror will use specialized places to save, dotted throughout the games that they exist in safe areas, usually without the ink ribbon-like system, so unlimited saving. I'm just going to call this a typewriter-style save system. By creating these specialized zones to save, it means that everything outside these areas is in danger of becoming lost progress, making the idea of braving these areas outside the safe zones feel more real in their danger. Unfortunately, as time chugged on and games became more focused on mitigating negative experiences, many horror games would move away from the ideas pioneered by their predecessors. Take Dead Space, for example. It basically has all the tells of a classic survival horror game save system. Safe zones, a typewriter equivalent, but it has one thing that completely alters the feel of the save system: the autosave. Not only an autosave, but also heavy checkpointing as well, meaning that death won't kick you back to any dedicated save station. Once you realize that this is in the game, it makes it feel a lot less tense. You no longer feel a wave of relief wash over you as you see a save point after a long stretch. You never have to weigh up going back to lock in progress or press off into the dangerous unknown. It takes out one of the key experiences of survival horror for the sake of a smoother overall experience. Now, I love Dead Space, but there's a reason that when I replay the game, it's always on the hardcore difficulty with autosaves turned off. It lets the horror back in. A lot of horror games do this now, discarding secondary mechanical elements of tension outside of just the threat of scary monsters jumping out at you. It's wasted potential. In the mid-2000s, we had games like Dead Rising, putting time-sensitive mechanics on top of the typewriter-style save design. You could brick your whole playthrough with poor planning and time management. And I think that that's awesome. Not that you actually have the aforementioned bricking occur, but that the potential for such a catastrophic ruination of your playthrough looming over your head as you play creates a palpable sense of tension. The fact that it could even happen turns a game that's tonally a campy zombie-killing romp into a mad dash trying to get from case to case without taking too much time, at the risk of missing out on important events. It was divisive, yes, but it pushed the horror forward in ways that modern AAA horror just refuses to. But where the mainstream fails now, you leave it to independent developers to pick up the torch. Fear and Hunger is a game that has garnered quite the reputation, not only for its quality, but also its commitment to the high level of cruelty it has aimed towards its players. If you're unfamiliar, it's a horror RPG released in 2018 that's known for extreme, almost comically levels of cruel difficulty. Every enemy encounter is given a level of lethality that would make the super bosses of most RPGs jealous. Most enemies have attacks that can permanently remove limbs from your party members, whole arms and legs. And that's not to mention the moves that just instantly kill you, usually in some hyper-violent way. It means that fighting anything is heavily discouraged. Most enemies don't even drop anything. The game lacks a traditional leveling system as well, so no experience points either. And its save system is no less cruel. Any time that you want to save, you have to find a bed to rest in. The only problem is that you're trapped in a nightmare murder dungeon, so sleeping is a bit of a coin flip. Literally.
No!
Anytime you save normally, you flip a coin. You lose that flip, and you're attacked. And as I described, the combat is hyper-lethal, meaning there's a good chance that you just die right before you get to save. It's so bold-facedly unfair, you really have to respect it. It's maybe the most aggressively cruel save system that I've seen in any horror game, and naturally it makes the experience of playing it this harrowing trial of both your willpower and your ability to plan ahead. It sucks. It's great. Most people who like this game will tell you not to play it unless you're ready to suffer. And a name like Fear and Hunger, it means it's fully realized its goals as a game and as a piece of art. Oh, and there's also time-sensitive objectives. And it doesn't even tell you about them until after you've failed them for the first time, when you find the corpse of the guy that you came to that particular dungeon to find. Incomprehensible. May God have mercy on your soul. A large portion about how Fear and Hunger gets its tone across is through its hellish save system. I'd argue that it's what gives the horror its real stakes. And by making saving dangerous, it solves a problem with the typewriter-style save system in horror games, a problem that becomes apparent once you play enough of them. The issue is this. If you're playing a game that has hard save points with no restriction on how many times you can save, no ink ribbons or anything like that, why wouldn't you save at every opportunity that you have? And not just when it's available, no. Why not go back and forth from various points of progress that you make, creating new hard saves every time you do something mildly significant? Find an item. Save. Fight a big group of enemies. Save. Fight a boss. Save. Save, save, save. Most horror games will not punish you for doing this. In most cases, it's just really annoying to run back and forth to save all the time. But it's a real problem. If the save system in these horror games is present to add tension, and the simplest way to relieve that tension is to do this annoying dance of moving back and forth over and over, the system sort of breaks. You might say that the solution is just to not do that, but these are horror games, specifically survival horror games, and they're designed to promote the maximization of any advantage that that system gives you. Unfortunately, maximizing the utility of the save system would to be saving as often as the game safely allows. Think of it like this. How often do you quick save in a game like Skyrim? Pretty often, right? I know I'm mashing that button like I'm trying to build meter in Third Strike. It's easy and it gives you a safety net. And it's just an RPG. Imagine the value of having a safety net in a survival horror game. A game that tends to skew on the harder side, more willing to kill the player and send them back to wherever they saved last. Like that F5 key, I'd be doing that dance back and forth all the way through the game, just to eke out a little bit of an advantage. But it kills the pace and annihilates the tension. Ink ribbons, time limits, and coin flips. They punish this type of behavior, but very few games are doing anything to forestall this saving dance. Games like Signalis have enemies that don't stay dead to stop players from risking a runback to any given save point, which is a good idea. But as long as you can avoid those enemies or permanently dispatch them, the problem simply rears its head again. You must make saving cost something to retain the tension of it. And many games refuse. Most horror games just slap an autosave system to stop people like me from doing things like this. Both the remakes of Silent Hill 2 and Resident Evil 4 take the hard-nosed typewriter systems of their original releases and slap an autosave on top of them. It's an understandable change, both for modern audiences and freaks like me. I no longer have any reason to torpedo my own play experience, and new players have to worry less about loss of progression. Trying to fix the problem by adding some secondary mechanic to punish save runbacks would in all likelihood make these games worse. And it's not like the games themselves were too fixated on their save systems to begin with. RE4 was more of an action game, and Silent Hill 2 wasn't as tough as most other horror games of the time. So we have a number of horror games that use the punishment of saving to build tension. Some that use the threat of lost progress to create a moment-to-moment stress that is then relieved at hard save points. Some games make it a resource, like the ink ribbon. And some games have an overarching time restriction that makes saving something to weigh up against other tasks. Notice how all of these are at best neutral and at worst are working against the player. But what if a horror game chose to use the carrot instead of the stick? In Look Outside, you explore your nightmare-filled apartment trying not to die, fighting people corrupted by a skybound nightmare that lurks behind every window, trying to gain any advantage that you can. Not unlike Fear and Hunger, Look Outside is a party-based RPG. But unlike Fear and Hunger, it doesn't use the RPG framing to subvert expectations, with fights that are harder than super bosses everywhere and the lack of a traditional EXP system. No, Look Outside is in fact more of a normal turn-based RPG, one with leveling up, tons of gear to find, and items to use. It's definitely a little harder than most RPGs, but if you play it like a normal one, you could probably get by pretty well. But it's also a horror game, and not in a superficial narrative framing way either. It's got resource management, and much like Fear and Hunger and Dead Rising, a limit on time. But not as a constant countdown ticking down in the background. Instead, it's measured more on individual, discrete actions. Everything in Look Outside takes time to do. Exploring from room to room takes time. Cooking a hot meal takes time. Playing a video game takes time. Every time you do one of these actions, time will increment forward to some proportion. And with only 15 days to find out what caused this catastrophe, you'll have to make good use of it, both to strengthen you and your party and also to gather the necessary information to try and fix what's going on. So with all that being said, how does its save system work? When you wake up every day, you are given the opportunity to save by talking to your neighbor, who speaks to you through these cracks in the wall. Don't worry, she's cool. After which you will not be allowed to save again until you meet some conditions. Either you need to pass the day in its entirety and get the same daily opportunity to save the next morning, or you could step outside your apartment and explore. As you explore the dimly lit halls, a danger bar will fill on the bottom of the screen in proportion to the amount of risk that you've taken during your bout of exploration. It increases with both the amount of time you spent mulling about and how many enemies that you've defeated. If it fills up enough, you're once again allowed to save when you return home. And that sounds kind of harsh, but wait, you only need to fill up 3 pips of this danger meter to be eligible to save again, which is trivially easy. So what's the rest of the bar for then? Well, it's not just to let you save. When you re-enter your apartment, the bar drains and you receive experience in proportion to how full it was. If you play risky and spend your whole day out exploring, you can get massive spikes in experience all by forgoing the act of saving. And these bonuses are calculated in such a way to give you way more if you fill the bar all the way up. This means that saving is not discouraged via punishment, but is in fact discouraged by incentive. Meaning that experienced players will choose to put themselves in risky situations as to reap the massive benefits of higher level danger. One of the big problems with getting good at playing any given horror game is that you grow wise of the game's tricks. You can mitigate or even sidestep the difficulty of any given game by simply being better at it. In other genres, this would be pretty much only a good thing. Growing in skill is a great feeling, and something that most games strive for in their players. But horror games seek to place their players in a very specific emotional state, one of fear through disempowerment and tension. But learning a horror game's tricks both empowers the player and relieves that tension. The relief in tension often comes from orchestrating circumstances to now favor the player instead of the other way around, meaning that once you figure out how to flip the script on a game, it's stuck permanently on that back foot. Look Outside has found a way to use that empowerment against these players. By offering rewards for skillful and risky play, it can lure players who feel comfortable back out into the danger, coaxing you to keep exploring, whittling down your party's resources for longer and longer, and then springing some horrible abomination on you that you were woefully underprepared for, shattering your confidence and reminding you that you're playing its game. It's an achievement in horror game design, and one that I think pushes firmly into unexplored territory in this genre, that for too long has left the most interesting mechanical proclivities underdeveloped. I also lost an hour of progress because it pulled this trick on me. I'm not even mad, which should speak to its strength of design. Look Outside is an amazing game, and you should play it. It's like $10. If you like horror, even like turn-based RPGs, it's a must-play. It proved to me that no matter how heavily treaded a game genre can feel, that there are always ways to explore them. And it makes me very excited for what comes next in horror.